The grand amphitheater of the Galactic Council was a marvel of super-dense crystalline architecture, designed to reflect the pure, unyielding light of 1,000 civilized star systems. Yet, beneath its radiant exterior, the atmosphere that afternoon was thick with cold, calculating malice. The great energy famine had gripped the known sectors for nearly a decade, draining star cores and leaving outer rim worlds begging for power. Instead of implementing a fair system of rationing across the high-tier founding species, the ruling oligarchy sought a simpler, more ruthless solution. They needed a scapegoat, a civilization they could strip of resources to keep the core worlds bright without sparking a civil war among the elite. They chose the Valari Republic. For centuries, the Valari had been the poets, artisans, and diplomats of the galaxy. They possessed a deeply honorable culture, rooted in philosophy and pacifism, which the more predatory species viewed as a fatal flaw. By a devastating, unanimous vote of the High Councillors, a sweeping decree was passed. The Valari were officially stripped of their resource-rich mining territories. Their galactic bank assets were permanently seized under the guise of emergency reallocation, and their border defense networks were forcibly deactivated. As the Valari diplomat stood alone on the central podium, his delicate, iridescent features paled under the harsh spotlights. He looked out at the sea of indifferent alien faces, realizing that his peaceful people had just been handed a slow, systematic sentence of extinction. With a heavy heart, he gathered his ceremonial robes and walked out of the chamber, his footsteps echoing like a funeral march through the silent hall. The ink on the council's decree was barely dry before the vultures began to circle. With the Valari Republic officially stripped of its legal protections and its automated defense grids neutralized, the predatory factions of the Outer Rim wasted no time. A ruthless pirate syndicate, known across the stars as the Bloodscythe Coalition, immediately mobilized a massive raiding fleet. They set a direct course for the undefended Valari homeworld, eager to plunder its ancient archives, enslave its vulnerable population, and claim the remaining planetary infrastructure. High Councillor Valen watched the long-range tactical sensors from the comfort of his luxurious, gravity-defying spire high above the capital planet. He casually sipped a glass of rare, fermented stellar nectar, completely unmoved by the red warning lights blinking across the Valari sectors. To Valen and his peers, this was simply the natural order of the cosmos, the strong consuming the weak to ensure the survival of the fittest. The Council had built its entire empire on the foundation of hyper-rational calculus, and in their equations, a peaceful species had zero value. Valen smiled as he closed the viewport, confident that the Valari were far too passive to mount any meaningful resistance, and certain that they possessed no allies foolish enough to defy the unified will of the Galactic Council. To the rest of the galaxy, the Valari Republic was already a collection of ghosts, a footnote in history to be forgotten by morning. The high-tier species were in the middle of a grand victory celebration, toast after toast being raised to the stabilization of the galactic economy, when the music was abruptly cut short. A sudden, violent blare of emergency sirens pierced the festive air, vibrating through the crystalline foundations of the capital. In the central command hub, supercomputers began to crash as deep space tracking sensors across the entire core sector went dark, one after another. Panic rippled through the gathered elites as the massive holoscreens in the council chamber flickered, replacing the celebration feed with a terrifying live view of the upper atmosphere. A colossal shadow, vast and suffocating, had fallen over the capital planet. An entirely unregistered, unannounced fleet had somehow bypassed every deep space sensor grid and planetary defense perimeter. These vessels bore no resemblance to the sleek, elegant, organic designs of the Council's armadas. They were monolithic, industrial leviathans constructed from raw, unpainted, dark metal. Their blocky, brutalist hulls were scarred by the debris of 100 different worlds, and they moved with a heavy, deliberate momentum that signaled absolute, uncompromising purpose. They did not broadcast luxury or prestige, they broadcast war. Before the Council's military commanders could even issue an order to scramble defensive fighters, a heavy, static-filled transmission overrode every communication channel across the capital planet. The elegant holographic displays of the assembly were replaced by a harsh, scrolling wave of unfamiliar, blocky text. When the audio finally connected, it wasn't the melodic or synthesized tones used by the civilized races. It was a deep, guttural, and booming voice that vibrated in the chests of everyone listening, translated into the galactic standard tongue with an icy, mechanical precision. The message did not ask for permission to speak, nor did it offer a polite diplomatic greeting. It was a direct, unwavering declaration of intent. To the Galactic Council. You have violated your sacred treaties with the Valari Republic. You have exactly 48 hours to return every asset you stole, restore their sovereign borders, and completely withdraw the pirate syndicate from their space. If you fail to comply, we will take it all back by force. The transmission cut out as abruptly as it had begun, leaving a single word burning on the screens to identify the unknown species, humanity. Once the initial shock wore off, High Counselor Valen laughed out loud, his mocking amusement echoing through the chamber. The Council's archival database was quickly queried, revealing that humans were classified as a minor, primitive species originating from a volatile, high-gravity world in a distant, forgotten sector. They were newcomers to the galactic stage, possessing no magical technologies or ancient relics. Looking closer at the live feeds of the human dreadnoughts, the Council's chief military tacticians pointed out what they considered a hilarious, fatal flaw. The human vessels lacked any visible plasma shields or energy barriers. To an empire that judged military might solely by the elegance of its energy manipulation, the human fleet looked like a collection of floating scrap metal. Confident in their absolute technological superiority, the Council ordered their elite Golden Armada, a fleet of hundreds of sleek, plasma-wielding dreadnoughts, to deploy immediately. Valen ordered the engagement to be broadcast across the galaxy, eager to make a brutal example out of these upstart apes who dared challenge the masters of the cosmos. The highly anticipated space battle lasted less than 20 minutes, and it did not go the way the Council had predicted. The elite Golden Armada advanced in perfect, beautiful formation, unleashing brilliant torrents of concentrated plasma energy against the incoming human vanguard. But to the horror of the alien tacticians, the human ships did not disintegrate. They didn't need energy shields. Their hulls were constructed from feet of dense, physical, multi-layered kinetic armor and thermal-absorbent alloys specifically designed to handle the volatile environment of their homeworld. The plasma washed over the dark metal, leaving glowing scars but doing no vital damage. Then, humanity fired back. They did not use light or plasma. The human dreadnoughts opened their massive lateral bays, revealing gargantuan magnetic railguns. Hyper-velocity tungsten slugs, traveling at a fraction of the speed of light, tore through the void. The Council's delicate energy shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, offered absolutely no resistance against the sheer, overwhelming physical mass. The slugs punched through the alien shields and hulls like paper, shattering the Golden Armada into a cloud of drifting debris and leaving the capital planet utterly defenseless. A suffocating wave of panic gripped the capital planet as the massive human dreadnoughts descended through the clouds, locking their primary weapon systems directly onto the government spires. The arrogant laughter of the previous hours was replaced by terrified screams and frantic evacuations. Terrified for his own survival, High Counselor Valen locked himself inside the deepest bunker of the subterranean archives. He bypassed all security protocols, screaming at the central supercomputers to dig through centuries of classified historical logs to find the missing variable. Why was this terrifying, brutal species risking an all-out galactic war for a minor, pacifist civilization like the Valari? In Valen's mind, every action in the universe had to be driven by a transaction, a bribe, or a secret weapon. He searched for hidden resource trades, secret military alliances, or ancient technologies that the Valari might have traded to the humans in exchange for their protection. But the data banks remained maddeningly blank, offering no logical explanation for humanity's ferocity. As the human ships began to deploy atmospheric landing craft, Valen stumbled upon an obscure, low-priority document from 2 centuries ago. It was a brief log detailing a minor, accidental encounter between a small Valari cargo vessel and a primitive human exploratory ship that had gone missing in uncharted space. Believing he had finally found the key, and assuming that humans were driven by the same greed and survival instincts as any other species, Valen frantically patched through an emergency communication channel directly to the human flagship. With a trembling voice, he offered the human commander an alternative deal. He promised humanity triple the Valari's original territory, unlimited access to the Council's primary energy reserves, and a permanent, highly coveted seat on the ruling council if they would simply turn their weapons around and help finish off the Valari. Valen waited, sweating under the glare of his monitor, but the human flagship remained completely silent, refusing to acknowledge the bribe as their troops continued their unstoppable descent. The reinforced titanium doors of the Grand Council chamber did not just open, they exploded inward in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. Heavy, mechanized footsteps shook the floor as human shock troops, clad in hulking suits of powered combat armor, flooded into the room, their kinetic rifles raised with deadly discipline. Walking safely and unharmed in the center of the intimidating human formation was the Valari diplomat, his head held high for the first time in weeks. High Counselor Valen fell to his knees behind his ornate desk, trembling with a mixture of intense rage and paralyzing fear. He looked up at the human commander, who towered over the room in matte black armor, and screamed in utter desperation, "Why do you care so much about them? They are a weak, dying species. They had absolutely nothing to offer you. What did they pay you to buy your loyalty?" The human commander stepped forward, the mechanical seals of his suit hissing as he raised a hand to remove his helmet. He revealed a weathered, scarred human face with cold, steady eyes that looked down at the cowering alien politician. "You think everything in this galaxy is a transaction," the commander said, his quiet voice carrying more weight than the roaring railguns. 200 years ago, when humanity first left our solar system, our colony ship's main engine failed in the deep void. We drifted in the dark for weeks, freezing, starving, and waiting to die. A Valari merchant ship happened to cross our path. They didn't know who we were, we spoke different languages, and we had absolutely nothing of value to give them. But they didn't care about profit. They spent half their own fuel and every ounce of their medical supplies just to keep a crew of alien strangers alive. When our ancestors finally asked how they could ever repay such kindness, the Valari captain simply smiled and said, "Just pass it on." They forgot about that day. They never recorded it in their grand histories. But humanity never forgot. Sign the surrender. Make sure to like and subscribe.